Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is day 36, episode 37 of 40 Days of 4VKM. We're back, and we got a little Christmas in February for you here. And it's the war on Christmas 2. The ghost of Christmas past proves future. So we have a little ghost in this episode here, which should be pretty fun. But we open it up with a little bit of a Christmas cartoon-ish, right? We're up at the North Pole. We have the 4VKM logo dressed up as Santa Claus. And we have Vince McMahon narrating, saying, ho, 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 this is Santa Claus coming to you from the North Pole, right? That clip comes up later on, the actual video of that, but you just hear his voice there. But what's this video about, right? This video is about the legal challenges brought on by the Brunson Brothers. You remember those guys, right? So they made a lot of noise. They got a lot of people upset. What I find very interesting is that if you ever mention the Brunson Brothers on X, you get about 2 or 3 trolls, like they got to be bots, because I can't imagine somebody just being on X all the time, just waiting for somebody to write Brunson Brothers for them to reply, right? And there's like a bot army that just attacks anytime you mention the Brunson Brothers. So I find it very interesting, to say the least. So anyway, the video starts off after the intro. Who do we got? We have Joe Biden back in 1999. And what is he doing? He's making Clarence Thomas's life a living hell in the Senate confirmation hearings to put Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. So, it's 10/11/1991. They got the hearing going on there. And Clarence Thomas is defending himself. And he's denying all these allegations that have come up with women and all this stuff. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound familiar? It's like the good old playbook. And as I'm researching this, I'm like, wow, they were doing it back then. I'm sure they were doing it for decades before that too, right? But it's the same exact playbook we see time and time and time again. And what is it ultimately? Projection. Because who's one of the biggest perverts in politics? It's Joe Biden, right? Laptop from hell, right? How about Ashley Biden's diaries? Oh, can we mention that? Right? What was it said in the diaries there? They took showers together, right? Alleged abuse, almost, right? So, very sick. And then you have Hunter, the son Hunter, who has basically child porn on his laptop from hell. Remember, Pedo Peter is in the contacts, right? So sick, kind of a sick family to say the least. And how rich is it that this guy is challenging Clarence Thomas on potential allegations with this woman Anita Hill, who they were able to bring out and smear. Do you smear? As VK said, do you smear? Well, Joe Biden and the Democrats, they love to smear, right? They love it. So, Clarence Thomas denying these allegations, right? And he's also saying this should never happen again, this circus, this ridiculous situation that they've put him in. And what ends up happening back in, 2017, 18, whenever Kavanaugh gets nominated, the same thing happens, right? The same thing. Remember, they were bringing up the beer pong games and all this stuff, right? And he said, I like to drink beer, right? And it's the same stuff. Who's the woman? I can't even remember her name, but it looked like she was being played by Schumer's daughter, Amy Schumer. Blasey Ford. Remember Blasey Ford? Oh my God, yeah. Where do they get these people? So you have the same thing going on with Kavanaugh. You have Clarence Thomas accusing staffers from the Senate confirmation hearing of leaking information to the press, right? Wow, where have you heard that before, right? And I show you the mashup with what's going on with Kavanaugh. And you have one of the senators, I don't remember who, he's a stiff though, he challenges Dianne Feinstein and says, did your staff leak this information about Kavanaugh? And she's like, oh, I haven't asked them if they did. And her staffers are behind her saying, no, we didn't leak it. Yeah, the hell you didn't, right? So, you have all that. You have Kamala Harris. Remember Kamala Harris, the wrestler? You have Kamala Harris, the senator at the time, your current VP, and she's making her big stand against Kavanaugh, right? She's saying, this is about our democracy. This is for the sake of our democracy, Kamala says. Their famous line, they want to protect democracy at all case. And their way of protecting democracy is by destroying democracy, right? It's kind of funny. We're not even a democracy. We're a republic. So, they can take their democracy and shove it up their ass, commie bastards. So, you have all this going on. Who do you have sitting behind Clarence Thomas as he's getting this, he's fighting back against Biden and these guys? You got Ginny Thomas. And what was relevant with Ginny Thomas at the time? Man, does the left hate her. They always want her to go to jail or, get in trouble for her role in whatever that was in January 6th, the Fedsurrection, right? So you have Ginny Thomas being crucified by the media. She's standing behind her man, Clarence Thomas, all those years ago, still standing together with them now today. And, they're fighting back. And you gotta think about, the hell that they've put these people through. Is it ever going to come back and bite them in the ass, right? Is Clarence Thomas ever going to somehow drop a hammer on them that just will be payback for all the hell they put him through, right? He's mentioning how this is a lynching, a modern-day lynching of an African-American man, right? And, it's not surprising considering Joe Biden was friends with Robert Byrd, right? Robert Byrd, who was in the KKK. He was one of the leaders of the KKK at a point. So, these are the people that they hang out with, So, and, even SNL back then. Granted, it was the early 90s, right? But what are they doing? They're piling on Clarence Thomas as well. They're trying to make Biden look like the cool guy, right? Even back then. And it's the same thing. It's the same games you got playing today, right? So it's funny kind of how history repeats itself, right? What's all reliable? Drum up some allegations with some women, hit them at them, leak it to the press, have them do our dirty work for us, right? And then we will convict in the court of public opinion and get people all riled up, to say the least. So let's see what happens, right? So now 32 years later, we cut to Nino's Corner TV, right? Nino. Nino, who always has Juan on, and he has a panel here assembled. It's Juan Savin. It's a character called The Ghost, and it's a gentleman by the name of Lloyd Brunson. And he's one of the Brunson brothers, 3 brothers that basically, they filed a lawsuit, multiple lawsuits, because there's several brothers, right? And they did it in different states, different jurisdictions. And basically what their lawsuit was, pretty black and white. It said that the members of Congress that confirmed the vote for Biden to get in as president, basically the January 6th proceeding, right? When they count the electoral votes, basically said that they did not uphold their oath of office. And the reason why they didn't uphold their oath of office is because you had so many attorney generals throughout the United States. You had so many people come forward and say, this election wasn't done right. We should take a pause and look into it first before we just rush through things procedurally and kind of close the book on things, right? And so you have these guys, they filed a lawsuit, and it was against basically every member of Congress that voted to confirm Joe Biden. And it also included Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I think it included Mike Pence as well, right? So you had all these people, and basically what they were asking for is, hey, they violated the oath of office. And what's the penalty for violating the oath of office? Removal of office, right? Now, unfortunately, nobody gets in trouble nowadays for violating your oath of office. I don't know the last time somebody was held accountable to that rule. But at the very least, they make their valiant effort for it, right? They're going to give it a shot. Now, something that I found was a very interesting sink, and only I could figure this out, right? Or kind of stumble upon this, because I don't know if anybody else would be looking, right? But Scott Sessions Harris, he is a Supreme Court clerk, and that basically calls up the Brunsons and says, "Hey, we're gonna push this through, right? We're gonna let them hear it." And they had filed it on a Rule 11, which Rule 11 kind of bypasses the lower courts who had held it up, and basically it's grounds for national emergency, right? So they're saying, hey, this is so important, it has to do with a national emergency. Our country's been hijacked by rogue politicians, and, send it right up to the Supreme Court, right? So Scott Sessions Harris is the Supreme Court clerk. So I just had to look into his let's look into this guy's background. Well, it turns out he was the grandson of Bucky Harris, who was a baseball player, and he was a manager for the Boston Red Sox, right? So now it gets even crazier. What do I always talk about? The PT 109 with JFK, right? Well, let me tell you that there was a guy on the PT 109 whose name was Charles Bucky Harris, and he was a gunner's mate, right? And he was named after that Red Sox manager. What are the odds of that, right? This PT 109 story strikes again, right? But now it's involved in the Brunson Brothers case. So it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy, right? Now, when I think of trials and I think of court cases, right? And then we're connecting things back to WWE, I got to ask myself, okay, is there any famous trials that happened in WWE, like in storylines? Yes, there was. It was the trial of Eric Bischoff, the former executive WCW. Then he went over to be the general manager of Monday Night Raw. And who's the judge in this case? It's Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And if you remember in the very first episode, we show a scene, Vincent Kennedy McMahon as judge, right? So we have this trial going on, the trial of Eric Bischoff. And what ends up happening at the end of that, we'll see. So Brunson, he's going through with Nino, and he's talking about how, they have the 380 defendants, and they end up being represented by the U.S. Solicitor General. And basically the U.S. Solicitor General waives their right to object, right? So doesn't object, doesn't ask for an extension, and lets the deadline pass, essentially where they had that right to either object or file an extension, right? Deadline comes, they don't do it. Now, around the same time, WWE is doing a show, first of its kind. It's called NXT Deadline. Whoa, what are the odds of that, right? And it was on 12/10/2022. And one of the parts of that in the advertisement is that they had two matches, and each match had, one match had 5 men, the other match had 5 women. So it's in the advertisements. 5-5, right? You got a little 5-5 there, NXT Deadline. But you also have the deadline for this case come and go, right? And it shocks Brunson that they didn't appeal or object to it or file an extension to keep it going or anything. They were just basically, all right, bring it on, let's go. And maybe it's because they knew that it was going to get thrown out so easily. They probably looked at it as a frivolous lawsuit, right? So go ahead, throw it out. So, so that's what's going on at this point. Think about all of the attacks that are happening on the Supreme Court at the time, right? I don't remember if Roe v. Wade had happened yet at this point, but you have everybody, rioting against the Supreme Court. You have the left threatening to pack the Supreme Court, right? And, essentially these guys have this case now in their hands, right? Almost like it's a threat, like, hey, mess with us, FAFO, right? We have this court case, we can drain the whole swamp if we want to, so you guys better watch what you do right there. It was almost like a game of chess at the end of the day, right? So maybe the lawsuit wasn't about actually going through with the lawsuit, but maybe the lawsuit was there as that chess piece to let the deep state know, hey, if you do cross a line, we've got this, and we'll do it. Now, some will argue, I'd probably argue, they should have done it anyway, right? But as we find out, that doesn't end up happening. So, we have the Ghost, right? We have the Ghost. Very, very fun character. Very mysterious character, right? Again, another familiar voice. Not saying it is anybody, but it's fun to imagine, right? And basically, you have the ghost who basically says that, this whole thing is exactly what should happen. As far as the trial goes, they violated their oath of office. So, what's the penalty for violating the oath of office? Is removal from office, right? So the ghost is in agreement with the Brunson brothers. And did I mention the Brunson brothers are trumpet players? They're trumpet players, right? So, again, kind of symbolic of everything, right? Remember the video we did with Los Matadores? What does Juan Savin say there? He goes, the whole thing will begin with some trumpets, right? And you have these guys with the trumpet players, right? So you have also, going back to that WWE comparison there, you have the trial of Vince McMahon, or the trial of Eric Bischoff, right? And he ends up being found guilty of, whatever the charges were. I think they were saying he's a bad GM, or, unsafe work environments, or some trumped up charges that they were trying to take him out on. And Judge McMahon rules that you're out of here, Eric Bischoff. And what's he do? He takes out the trash, right? And he removes him from office, right? So you have that removal of office going on there. Vince McMahon picks up Eric Bischoff, throws him in the back of a dumpster truck, trash truck, and then drives off. Drives the truck himself out of the arena, which is pretty funny, right? So you have all these parallel stories, right? The other interesting thing, too, is if this case was to go through and they were to remove, all these people from office, Nancy Pelosi, all of them, right? Then what would have happened? Who would have done it? Again, this is where it gets super interesting. Remember the guy that went on Good Morning America? And he said, "Good morning, sir. I'm very proud of everybody that's come in, the National Guard, police departments, military, who've all come in to assist us with the peaceful transition to military power." Remember that guy? His name was William Wallace. Was it William Walker? Sorry. Got mixed up with Braveheart, right? And what position did he get after January 6th and after he goes in there to take control of the situation? He becomes Sergeant of Arms, right? The guy that steps out when the president's doing the State of the Union address and says, members of Congress, I give you the President of the United States, right? That guy would have been the guy to remove all these people. So it's very interesting when you think about that guy's in charge of it. He's the one that came in and said, we're transitioning to military power. Then he takes over the Capitol. And a lot of people have speculated about what's really going on in D.C., what's really going on in the Capitol, right? Seems like it's been under construction for a while. If you follow the woman, Nancy Drew, good last name, she kind of shows some weird stuff that's going on at the Capitol, right? So this William Walker guy, he's there. He's in charge of security now at the Capitol post January 6th. And then I think about, what do they say happened on January 6th? They said that Nancy Pelosi's laptops were stolen and some stuff like that, right? So was there more of an op on January 6th than we know about right now? I don't know. It's very, very interesting. That is my favorite word, interesting. So now we're going to go into some holiday spirit stuff, right? You ever see the movie Elf? There's that famous scene where they're in Central Park in New York City. It's Elf with the little boy and Santa, right? And Santa's sleigh won't fly. And it won't fly anymore because not enough people believe in Santa. So what am I showing the comparison there, right? Not enough people were believing this idea that possibly JFK Jr. is still alive, right? We got to get the JFK Jr. spirit going again, right? And kind of show some people some stuff to get them believing again, if they didn't already, right? So we show you a gentleman, Edward X. Young, who a lot of people like to speculate on who he is. Just look him up and, it's not him all the time, right? Again, what do I think happens? I think a certain somebody plays multiple different individuals. And then you see both people. You see the real person, and then you see the one played by Junior, right? So in this instance, you have Edward X. Young. He, I think, and sometimes gets played by Junior. And other times you see him in interviews and all this other stuff, it's Edward X. Young, right? So I think that's where people get thrown off, because they'll see one clip of a guy and they'll say, there's no way that could be him, right? But that person looks totally different from this person that I show you in this clip here, right? So Edward X. Young, he's at a Trump rally. He's wearing a green hat. He's got all his Trump stuff on. And he's from Point Pleasant, New Jersey, right? And he has a lot of fun stuff that he says about New Jersey. So it's funny to say the least. Now, President Trump, just yesterday, he filmed 2 days ago from when I'm recording this, or from when it airs, but he dropped a video on Truth Social with the title, "The Best Is Yet to Come." And in that video, in sequences, he shows you like everything we've shown you in 4VKM in terms of JFK and even JFK Sr., right? So first he shows you the Secret Service agent, which we get into in this episode, right? So the Secret Service agent is the bald guy that walks down the inauguration parade behind Melania, Trump, and Barron, right? He's he's just all bald. The media was speculating he had a fake hand because he had a gun underneath it, right? And then they debunked that. And then we have all these clips of him around Hillary, Obama, Michelle Obama, right? He's like everywhere. It's like he's embedded in with these people, right? And we know who people suspect the Secret Service agent is, right? So you have, and if you go back to the last video, Good Day to Save the World, you see some clips of a mask that looks like that guy and kind of a comparison there. So go back and watch that video if you want to see who we're talking about there. But then we cut to a scene with Ellen, and Ellen's set, oddly enough, it mirrors Epstein Island Temple, right? So it looks, as soon as somebody pointed that out to me, I couldn't unsee it. So you have Ellen on the set of Epstein Island, just kidding, on the set of Ellen, and she's interviewing Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama gets asked by Ellen, what was in that box that you got at the inauguration? And Michelle goes, oh, the Tiffany box, right? Remember what I told you in Gridiron Gang 1? JFK Airport. What did they open up? They brought the Tiffany blue box to life. They created a Tiffany blue store at JFK Airport. Wow, what are the odds of that? What else is the significance of the Tiffany blue box? Well, the burial at sea that happened after JFK Jr.'s plane crash, their ashes were placed in a Tiffany blue box and then thrown overboard. And remember, there's 17 members of the Kennedy family on board that ship. Very interesting, right? Tiffany blue is kind of their colors. They say Jackie Kennedy invented the color Tiffany blue, right? So what are the odds of that? So you have, going back to the Trump clip, right? So Trump, he shows them walking down the inauguration parade with the Secret Service agent behind them. And then the very next scene they show is old school JFK Sr., and then the very next clip after that is JFK Jr. giving the little salute, right? And then they show Mar-a-Lago there, which is interesting because remember when General Flynn was asked, hey, is JFK Jr. alive? He goes, well, he's not at Mar-a-Lago. And you have, later on in the video, what did we show you back in Gridiron Gang 4? Trump did the World War II memorial, and he had the two old guys sitting in the front row. One of them was wearing the D-Day survivor hat, and that's who Negative 48 said JFK was. And then there's the other guy that people said, no, that's actually JFK Sr. still alive, right? So in the same video I'm talking about with Trump, where he shows JFK Jr., and then the Secret Service agent that we say is JFK Jr., he also shows the old man that people say is JFK, giving him a big hug, right? So what are the odds all these things are in one Trump video that he posts on Truth Social, right? This was like 10 times better than him posting a Q drop, if you ask me, right? Because it was validation for a lot of people, to say the least, right? So enjoy the show, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the show. And I'm saying that early today, but really, I want you to enjoy the show. Now, I'm enjoying the show, and especially around this time, because in mid-December 2022, remember our guy Vince McMahon, he's gone, right? They got him out. He resigned on my birthday, June 17th, 2022. And, 12/13/22 comes around, and the reports are out. Vince McMahon's trying to make a comeback in WWE. He's trying to come back, right? People start losing their minds. All the Vince haters start losing their minds, right? No, there's no way he could come back, right? Well, we're going to get to it in the next episode, how he came back, right? But I show you, it's weird how this all happened, right? So I show you Vince dressed as Santa. Ho, ho, ho. This is Santa Claus. And he starts off, he's sleeping, and then he wakes up like this, right? And that's where I show you Vince McMahon trying to make his comeback in WWE. Now, we're going to get back to that in a little bit. But before, as we're going through the video, then I show you guys a little something called The Tempest, right? Now, what do we say, Junior? Junior loves to play actors. He liked to play different roles. When he was in college, he went to Brown University. Fun fact, do a Google search for 4VKM, and for whatever reason, you get a search result page for Brown University with the search of 4VKM in Brown University. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, when you search 4VKM, Brown University's website comes up, and it's the search results for 4VKM on their website, and there's zero search results. There's none there. So I don't know how this has ended up like this, but it's there. So it's weird. Because Brown University is where JFK Jr. went to school. And while he was there, he participated in a little play called The Tempest, right? And what a lot of people had pointed out to me is that in The Tempest, nobody dies. Nobody dies in The Tempest, right? So it's kind of an interesting parallel right there. Now, there's more Tempest in connections to Junior. At his memorial mass, Caroline, his sister, reads passages from The Tempest, the play that Shakespeare wrote, right? So you have Tempest being read at his funeral. Nobody dies, right? And then going further, years back, there was a woman named Tempest, right? Temptress Tempest, I think it was, or something like that. She was one of those ladies, right? And apparently she had affairs with JFK and Elvis. At least that's how it goes. Tempest Storm, that was her name. Tempest Storm. Wow, what are the odds of that, right? So you have Tempest Storm lined up with Elvis and JFK. And I don't know, maybe they were really all having affairs, or maybe it's just comms at the end of the day. I tend to lean towards comms, right? And then it's holidays. What do we have? We're talking about Santa. We're talking about JFK Jr. And, there's that theory that him and Carolyn were at the Trump rally that time dressed as Santa and Mrs. Claus, throwing out the MAGA hats. You remember that, right? So can't confirm that or whatnot. But again, it's fun to think about. And what's the whole goal here? It's to get people to open up their mind a little bit to the possibility that this is all going down. The more people we believe, the more people that will believe, right? We can hit that tipping point and get over the period where we need to, right? So I show you then in the clip, I just showed you all this JFK Jr. stuff, right? And you know what? We raised the spirit. We raised the JFK Jr. spirit, and the sleigh takes off in Elf, just like in Elf. Remember when they saw him in Central Park, and then they all believed, and whew, sleigh takes off, and you see in the sleigh, you have JFK Jr.'s face and pulls over Santa. So, talking again about that tipping point, we have Rachel, Right Side Blonde, interviewing Juan Savin, and she asked him, she goes, what percentage of Americans are awake right now?
And he says about 80%, and it's been like that for 3 weeks. This is December 2022. We're in early 2024 right now. What is it now? 85%, 90%, right? What percentage do we need to get to for something to happen here, right? So I think we're close. So we wrap things up this episode. It's the holidays again. We talked about it in the first War on Christmas. But this is really talking about tribute to the troops, right? And this year they were celebrating their 20th tribute to the troops, where WWE performs a show with all of our servicemen and women from wherever they are in the country or the world. And this was their 20th episode. So 20 spelled out equals 107. Military equals 107, right? So it's the 107th edition, if you think of it that way, right? And they have a guy come out, John Wayne Truxell, and he basically comes out and he gets the crowd all fired up. He goes, "Where's my Army guys at?" Right? And we show you Lashley, because Lashley was in the Army, right? He goes, "Where's all the Navy guys at?" And they yell, and we show classy Freddie Blassie. Remember, he was Sailor Blassie. He was in the U.S. Navy. And then this one was tough for me. I couldn't figure out Air Force, right? I couldn't find any WWE wrestlers who were in Air Force, so I did the next best thing I could do, and I showed my dad with me and him in that scene where Linda McMahon calls out Vince McMahon to ask him for a divorce, right? And, the sad part is my dad had passed away about a week before this video had come out, so it was a way for me to kind of sneak in a little tribute to him as well. And he represented the Air Force right there. There he is on WWE TV, Air Force, right? And if you ever see me with the Air Force hat, that's what I wear for. I wear it from him. Well, actually, one of them is his hat. And, it's just my way of paying tribute to the Air Force and to my dad. And then he mentions the Coast Guard. And who's in the Coast Guard? VKM's dad, right? So Vincent Kennedy McMahon's dad was in the Coast Guard in World War II. So, John Wayne Truxell, he goes, "We are winning," and he thanks Vince McMahon, right? And I show you guys an ending scene with the Brunson Brothers, right? And behind them is the intro to the WWE pay-per-view Capital Punishment, right? Capital Punishment, that's what this would be if that lawsuit goes through, right? Capital Punishment. And when is the hearing for the capital punishment? And it almost seemed like the stars were all aligned, right? Now, we know what didn't happen, but again, I think it was all comms at the end of the day. You had 1/6/2023. So on the 2-year anniversary of January 6th is when the Supreme Court was going to do this hearing. And I show the date, 1/6/2023, right? Capital punishment. John Wayne Truxell, he says, if anybody messes with our freedoms, the military stands ready. Good to know. Now, tying it all back to Vince McMahon, we were anticipating on 1/6/2023 something to happen with the Brunson Brothers. And then remember, at the same time, they were having the speaker debate. And everybody wanted Speaker Trump. And we were all saying, can you imagine if Speaker Trump gets in and then they wipe out everybody in Congress, and that's Trump's way back to the presidency then at that point? Because Biden would have been gone, Harris would have been gone, and then Trump, as the speaker, he would have became the president, right? Well, that didn't happen. We were anticipating it to happen on that day, the 2-year anniversary of January 6th. It would have been like poetic justice, right? But who ends up coming back on January 6th, 2023? Our guy, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And we're going to talk about that more in the next episode tomorrow. So, with that being said, make sure you check out the episode War on Christmas 2, The Ghost of Christmas Past Proves Future. Love that name. Link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe for VKM Podcast. That's going to be launching on 2/21/2024 next week. And 4VKM.com, as always, all the episodes in order. You can watch them
there. So, I said it earlier. I'll say it again. Enjoy the show. It's getting good.